Evil Dead the game came out exactly 1 week ago today. And I think it's fair to say that the game has been doing fairly well for itself, especially in the Twitch streamer community. It was trending on Twitter at one point, and on Twitch, the viewership is normally in the tens of thousands at least, if not pushing towards the 100,000 mark. And to be honest, whether or not the game is good, whether or not people have actually enjoyed the gameplay itself is not what we're here to talk about today. You can draw your own conclusions on that, but today, we're going to be talking about one of the biggest talking points since the game was released, and that is its comparison to Dead by Daylight. More specifically, whether or not we should/can compare it to Dead by Daylight. And remember, if you enjoyed this video, guys, please do leave a like. Let me know in the comments what you think of everything that I'm about to say, let me know your thoughts. And also, please do subscribe if you haven't already. I'm trying to hit 5,000 subscribers by the end of 2022. So any help getting to that goal would be really, really, really awesome. So yeah, if you enjoy it, please do subscribe. And without much further ado, let's get into it. So as I've said, one of the biggest talking points of Evil Dead is how it compares to Dead by Daylight, and whether or not this game could be a killer for Dead by Daylight in terms of destroying its player base. And it was spoken about a lot on Twitter. There are many tweets that I could have taken, but I took this one from Asimovs, who is quite a prominent Dead by Daylight creator. And he took a screenshot from the Reddit page of Evil Dead the game that showed Evil Dead having a higher viewership than Dead by Daylight. Now, as you can see in the tweet itself, Asimovs isn't exactly keen on the idea of people constantly discussing this comparison between the two games. And to be fair, he's not the only one. A lot of people have been getting annoyed about this and they've been raising their voices about it. So, should we compare the two games? Well, let's start with the similarities between them. Both of them are asymmetrical 4v1 formatted games. Both of them are set in the horror genre. Both of them have survivors as the name of the four-man squad. And both of them have Ash as a playable character from the Evil Dead series. And that's about it. The game is literally different in every other sense, from its gameplay to its survivor system, to its classes, to its leveling system, to the way it just feels while you're playing it. It's all completely different. And that would lead us to say that, no, we can't compare the two games. They're just too different. Both have taken the 4v1 asymmetrical format and done something completely unique and different with it in their own rights. However, for me, it is kind of inevitable that these comparisons will be drawn. Because let's face it, Dead by Daylight is still the most popular asymmetrical 4v1 horror game there is. In fact, it kind of set the bar in terms of quality from what we can expect from this style of game. So that means that any new game, whether it's Evil Dead or VHS or anything really that takes that format, is going to be compared to Dead by Daylight. And to be fair, it is actually a helpful comparison to draw. If you think about any time you're trying anything new out, you like to compare it to something you already understand. For example, movies. If we look at horror movies, we can say that the Evil Dead is very, very different to something like Nightmare on Elm Street. But because they're both in the same kind of genre, drawing those comparisons and understanding the similarities and differences can help us ascertain whether or not we want to actually give time to that media. AKA, in this instance, whether or not we want to spend the money to buy the game and put the hours into playing it. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that we're comparing the two games. And I think, like I said, it was inevitable. But as the game grows, and I'm referring to the Evil Dead game, I do think that we should start seeing it as its own beast. Evil Dead is its own game, and it's going to have its own life, its own trajectory, its own roadmap, everything about it, and constantly comparing it to Dead by Daylight, in my opinion, is just going to hold the game down. It's kind of like living in someone else's shadow almost. Look into the future, will this game kill Dead by Daylight? Probably not. In fact, I don't actually see that ever happening. But is that a mark against Evil Dead's quality? Absolutely not. These games are going to coexist, I think, rather than compete. And I think that's a good thing. I think we should be able to have two games which fit the similar style and genre that can coexist. It gives us more variety. We shouldn't be constantly trying to pit them against each other. All in all, I think the most interesting comparison that's going to be drawn from these two games is how they've both approached the 4v1 asymmetrical style. And that kind of thing we're not going to know until Evil Dead has lived for a bit, once it's worked out its initial release kinks. I think comparing them now is only going to hurt the Evil Dead game. because you're comparing a game that's been out for 7 days versus a game that's been out for a very much longer and is currently celebrating its 6th anniversary. So inevitably, the one that's been out longer and has had more experience is probably going to win that fight. So I guess the takeaway is, if you're an Evil Dead fan and you want to see this game succeed, stop comparing it to Dead by Daylight. Just experience it for what it is and let it be its own entity and allow these two games to coexist. That's my piece on it anyway. If you guys have different thoughts, please do let me know in the comments below. I'd love to start a dialogue about this kind of thing, because I think it is interesting to discuss how new 4v1 games are going to affect the reputation and player base of Dead by Daylight. I think it's going to be interesting to see. And as I've said before, please do subscribe if you enjoyed, leave a like, and have a great day. Bye for now. So let me break it all down for you. I ain't never giving up, I ain't never, you know I'm taking that crown from you.